These would be the notes for solving percent problems. There is a PDF available on the website. Go ahead and take a look at that if you'd like to. First of all, let's talk about what a percent is. Percent means divide by 100, or it also means items measured in parts per 100. If we have 27%, that means 27 out of 100. We can also take the top number divided by the bottom number and turn it into a decimal. So 0.27 is also the equivalent of 27% because this is 27 hundredths. You can change fractions into percents by dividing the numerator by the denominator and then multiply it by 100. Actually, that will give you a percent back. If you just want to convert it to a decimal, you just divide the top by the bottom. If I want to convert that back to a percentage, I would have to times it by 100 because percents are part per 100, and that calculation there will turn that back over. Or you can just read this as 27%. It's really up to you. Solving using a proportion. A is P percent of B. A is this percentage of B. A is part of the base. So this is part, and since 100 represents the total, B, we call it the base, but you can also call that the total number as well. So you got part of the number, or part of the total, and you got the total there, and P simply represents the percentage of something. I'm going to go ahead and use a calculator for this one. They're asking what percent of 25 is 17. Of 25 represents the total of something. Is represents the part. So 17 is the part, 25 is the total, and we want to know what percent out of 100 that represents. Then we can solve this just like a regular proportion, cross multiply and divide. P times 25 would be 25P. 17 times 100 will give you 1700. And then we're going to divide both sides by 25. Divide both sides by 25, so 1700 divided by 25. And that gives us exactly P equal to 68. So 17 out of 25 is the equivalent of 68 out of 100, or 68%. Since we're solving for the percent side over here, we can go ahead and put a percent symbol on there, so 68%. So it's kind of like if you had 17 questions out of 25 questions correct, that would be a 68%. What number is 30% of 90? Well, we're going to go ahead and set up our proportion by putting the percent number over 100, because percents are always over 100. The word of, again, means the total. And remember that 100 represents the total of anything else, so 90 will go on the bottom, and we're solving for the part on top. We're still going to cross multiply. N times 100 gives you 100N, and 30 times 90 will give you 2700. Then we're going to divide by 100 on both sides. And we end up with N equal to 27. This is not a percentage because we weren't solving for the percent side, so it's 27 out of 90, which is 30%. Our next one here is the, let's see if I can get that, there we go. Solving percents but using the equation. This one is the method I prefer. There's just one thing about it you got to be careful of. A is still P percent of B, so A is still this percentage of B. So this is the part and this is the total now. But here's the thing you got to be careful of. P must be written in decimal form when you use this method. Okay, so this has to be a decimal. So if I say 37%, then what would go here would be 0.37. Remember I said earlier to change a percent into a decimal, put it over 100, top divide by bottom, and that would give us 0.37. And that number then would go right there. This is still the part, this is still the total, and of does mean multiply. Is, of course, means equals, so A equals some percent times B. What percent of 136 is 51? Is 51, that's the part. We want to know the percent, so we don't know what that is, so we're going to put P times of 136. That's the total. So part equals percent times total. We're going to divide both sides by 136. And we have P, use a calculator here, equal to 51 out of 136. And what that comes out to is 0.375. But as we said before, that this calculation deals with the P, or the percent, as a decimal value. So if you want to convert this into the actual percentage value, you still have to take it one extra step and multiply it by 100. And all that really does is move our decimal 2 places over to the right. So this ends up being 37.5% is the value that we're looking for. So 51 is 37.5% of 136. We'll try another one here. This is the of, that's the total. We're looking for the what number, that's the part, equals 15% of that number. So n is equal to, now keep in mind, this needs to be a decimal. You can't put 15 here. You have to put 15 over 100, divide that out, and you'll get 0.15. So 0.15 needs to go there. Of course, means times by the total of 88. So using our calculator, we're going to do 0.15 times the total, and that will give us the part that we're looking for. So make sure you use a calculator on each of these calculations. And we get 13.2. This is the part that is 15% of 88. If you'd like to, you can go ahead and pause the video and try this one on your own. 20 equals, that's our part, 12.5% of what number, that's the total, of means the total, oops, that's an L, but I have to change this to a decimal, this percent, so I know it's percent times the total, but this decimal needs to be moved over 2 places to make it a decimal value or decimal equivalency of a percent. So 12.5% in decimal form is actually 0.125 times some number. So the 12.5% times the total will give us the part that is 20. So we're going to divide both sides by 0.125 or 12.5%. Make sure you use a calculator. So 20 divided by 0.125, and we get a total value of 160. Okay, word problem. Survey asked 220 students to name their favorite pasta dish. Find the percentage of students who chose the given pasta dishes, which are listed here. Here's the original list, and they're asking us for the percentage of macaroni and cheese and the percentage of lasagna. So we have 2 calculations we got to do. Now, the nice thing about this particular problem is they told us how many students were surveyed. That is our total, 220. That's what's representing 100%. Sometimes they don't tell us what the total is, and we end up having to add the entire column there to first find out what our total is. Because remember, they're asking for the percentage. And percents are our parts per 100, and 100% represents the total of something. So right here, the total would be 220 students. So if they didn't tell us that in the given information, we have to then go and calculate that first. Okay, so we're going to go and do part A first. I'm going to use the proportion method. Macaroni and cheese, that is 33 people out of 220. And I want to know what percent that is. And we're going to cross multiply 220 times P. And 33 times 100 is 3,300. And then we're gonna divide both sides by 220, so 3,300 divided by 220, and we get 15%. Now, anytime you use the proportion method, you don't have to adjust the decimal in here for percent, for decimal values, because it's already over 100, so it is an actual percentage number, not the decimal equivalent of that number. Okay, I'm gonna do the lasagna now, do that in a different color. Lasagna was here. Now, before we even do this, we can see that there are 40 people who chose lasagna as their favorite dish, but only 33 who chose a macaroni and cheese. Now, since 40 is greater than 33, we can expect the percentage for lasagna to be bigger than 15%. So that's a reasonableness check before you actually get started. So we still have a part of 40 out of a total of 220 people still. The same total we had here. Now we just got to calculate that as a percentage. Cross multiply, 220p is equal to 4,000. Divide by 220 on both sides, so 4,000 divided by 220. And this comes out to about 18.18, and it's actually a repeating percent. So if we wanted to, we can just say it's about 18%. Eventually, our percentages should add up to not 220, but 100%. But because of rounding like this, they might not add exactly to 100%. That's okay. So about 18%, which was higher than the 15% as expected.